Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to another PFFA Roundtable. Today, I'm joined by three wonderful partners that we work with individually and as a collaboration in finding the solutions and the answers for what we need to do moving forward. So I've got wonderful Julia here from Better Food Traders. We're joined by Nick from Open Food Network, and also we've got Steve here from the Good Food Project. And I'm just going to ask each one to introduce themselves and their initiatives briefly for you today. If we could start with you, Julia.
So Better Food Traders is a UK-wide network that supports and promotes ethical food retail. Our members include shops, market stalls, food hubs, veg box schemes, really anyone trading in food which is both locally grown and sustainably grown. So we kind of use organic as the standard around that, but really organic, agroecological produce. Just trying to, support amazing independent retailers who are there for their communities, for farmers, and making sure that that value chain stays at a very local level in the community.
Brilliant. Fantastic. Thank you. Nick, over to you, sir.
Thank you. I'm Nick Weir. The Open Food Network is a global cooperative of people growing food, farmers, growers, and people growing food at really small scales, and the people eating the food. And what we're trying to do is build short food supply chains to make the food as accessible as possible in the locality where people are growing the food. The Open Food Network is an open source platform that is in common ownership, that is used by these people, by these stakeholders, to build local food systems. And they look very, very different in different parts of the country. And I'll be happy to talk a bit more about that later. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick. And lovely Steve.
Thank you. My name is Steve Pollard from GoodFood Project. So we set up about a year ago with a view to creating an alternative to the supermarkets, or the soulless supermarkets, or not so supermarkets as we call them. There's a lot of anti-supermarket sentiment out there, rightly so. Their organic is debatable at best. Not one of the supermarkets has opened up or gone to market with the premium brand organics like Biona or Mr. Organic. They've all wanted to create their own brand organic. Why is that? Because they want to control what organic looks like. We don't trust them. Lots of people don't trust them. And we are setting up a national supermarket style shopping experience for people that can rival the supermarkets and basically give people an alternative. We kind of call it people creating a super marketplace. Get what you can from Good Food Project and the other groups that are here, but your local farmer, your butcher, your baker, your candlestick maker, if you work with them and us and others, you can create your own super marketplace, which was far better than any of the supermarkets out there. And we need to go down this kind of route.
Fantastic. Brilliant. Thank you so much to all of you. We're going to dive straight in today. We've got three kind of key questions we want to work through. And I'm very keen to get everybody's thoughts and ideas, because this isn't just about what we can do at PFFA. It's about all of us and others coming together to find the solutions. So the first question we've got: what are the changing shapes and vulnerabilities of current national and international food systems? I'm going to mix it around this time. I'm going to come to you, Steve, first and foremost, just to confuse everyone. What are your thoughts on that? What are the vulnerabilities we've currently got in our food systems across the world?
Well, you've got loads. I mean, you just need to look at the shortages in the supermarkets, the telegraphing of rations, and the government getting involved with supermarkets to cap prices. All of these are red flags, warning signs of the way things are going. We used to be hunter-gatherers. We used to be able to go out and forage and find food. And, right now you're dependent on the supermarkets and the fake food corporations to feed you and your family. That would never have happened. In years gone by, you would never have taken food from your enemy in many ways. And that's what it feels like. These guys do not have our interests at heart. You go into any supermarket with a Yucca app and you look at the poison that's on those shelves, and you tell me, if I put that stuff on these shelves here, people in this community would crucify me for it. They would say, why have you got that product that's bad for my kids' health sitting on your shelves? And it would never happen. But yet these supermarkets are there, and we're turning a blind eye to it. So we're awake, but we're not that awake. We're not awake to what's really going on. We're turning a blind eye. They've got us on price. That's the real vulnerability, that they can put the prices down so low that we're forced to buy it, and that real organic looks expensive compared to their entry-level organic. but just because not all organic is equal. There's organic, there's organic, there's organic. And it doesn't always have to be organic either, because chemical free, there's a lot of good chemical free. Julia, you touched on this there, this sort of ethical local growers. These guys in many ways are producing a better product than what would normally be called organic, so again, we need to get away from this. We're stuck on price, we're stuck on that label of organic as well. But yeah, it's a good question. There's a lot of vulnerabilities. We could spend an hour talking about the various
There's also
the
international markets, because at the end of the day, we've lost our self-sufficiency in the UK in terms of, we used to eat seasonally, and that was fine. We were planning for that. And as the numbers of the citizens have increased, and obviously the international trade markets, we've gone out there, we get so much of our grain and various other items from other countries. And I think personally, for me, especially when you look at the supply chain, how vulnerable it actually is, I think that puts us in a negative position. I think we should be personally kind of trying to generate the maximum amount we can from the UK, which means, though, surely, Julia, that we need to ask consumers to change their habits in order for us to achieve that. So we're working on a more seasonal basis. Would you agree that that would strengthen our position if we could get consumers to look at focusing a bit more on seasonal produce?
I mean, yeah, absolutely. I think that's one of the elements. We've all just grown very accustomed to be able to have strawberries in winter and avocados on tap and all of this sort of thing, which you completely understand where that's come from, but it's just not really sustainable. It's not a way to eat, to have, soft fruit flown in across the planet is kind of crazy. But I suppose we've lost that appreciation for what seasonal eating is. We've kind of lost even an understanding of what grows when and how do you cook certain vegetables. And in fairness, I think people don't feel confident, and people kind of rely on processed foods and takeaways and things like that when they don't feel that they have the skills to go and cook from scratch. So I think there's definitely, there's an education piece there. Just to sort of go back to some of the questions around the fragility of the system, and you touched on kind of global markets. I mean, in the UK, we rely on 46% of our food being imported, and we even with the food that we do have, 90% of it goes through 9 big players, the big 9 supermarkets. And when food goes on that journey to get to your supermarket shelf, I live in Kent, so there are loads of amazing fruit growers here, but their strawberries will be picked and packed in Kent and then go to a centralised warehouse like 150 miles away to then be sorted again and then sent back to the local Tesco that is literally 2 miles from where it was first picked. So all this food is doing this enormous journey with all the food miles and the packaging that's associated with that because of these heavily centralised systems, instead of actually people seeing what's around them, knowing their local growers, knowing their local independent shops, and going and buying, much more directly, and where you can also have that relationship of trust in that how things have been produced. That you can literally take that plastic packaging back and it will go back to the person who's going to use it again, instead of, going through the recycling system. So all these things that just seem so perverse, but as Steve was saying, we're driven by price, and I suppose by convenience as well, to find that the supermarkets are kind of the only option, or feel like the only option.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Nick, in terms of the vulnerabilities, what are your thoughts on that?
I just want to pick up on what Julia was saying. I completely agree in terms of the control and the influence that supermarkets have had on our buying habits, not just in terms of the types of food that we're buying, but the prices. The supermarkets are promoting this idea that cheaper is better, when actually the nutritional value of a lot of the produce coming out of supermarkets is falling. I was listening to a podcast yesterday. I'd like to put up a link to it if you'd be willing to distribute it with this, which I listened to yesterday. A couple of doctors talking about ultra processed foods and how a vast majority of the produce that's coming out of supermarkets is ultra processed, is not made from the basic ingredients you find in your kitchen. It's been messed with, and in the messing, the taste might go up and the appearance might go up, but actually the quality, the nutritional quality is going down, resulting in a lot of health issues. The other thing about price is how what proportion of our disposable income we're spending on food. And that, again, is going down and down and down and down and down. If we go back 100 years, people were spending a lot more of their total household budget on food. And the other thing that supermarkets are encouraging us to do is to pay less and less and less for our food. And that is having a massive impact, not just on our health, but also on the viability of food production. So one of the big issues I'm coming across is producers who are really struggling to grow the high quality food that Steve was talking about. It's harder and harder for small scale farmers to grow agroecologically and get the food to market at prices that will compete with supermarket prices. And we do need small scale local food producers. We can't rely on grain imports from the Ukraine. We can't rely on food, as Julie was saying, over half of our food coming from outside the country. We've got to grow the food close to where people are eating it. And other issues, I mean, we haven't even talked about climate change, we haven't talked about land access, we haven't talked about food poverty, which is the other massive issue that is facing us, increasing numbers of people not being able to feed their families. And yes, I won't go on.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, just a couple of pointers there. You're absolutely right in terms of what the farmers and producers are up against. I've just seen a notice this morning been brought to my attention that a farm local to me, they've only got a few hundred dairy cows, but they're having to shut their shop. They tried to diversify, they tried to do all the things the government suggested, and they're having to shut shop when they've had the farm in the family for over 100 years. So I'm actually going to reach out to them on a one-to-one level and see actually what the option is for the community to come and get involved to support the costs that they're dealing with, but help them diversify a little bit more and see if we can save the situation. And I don't know if we'll be successful, but this is one of the major issues. So the importation is going to increase as our farming capabilities lower, or we end up the mega farms that we know none of us are remotely interested in having. So the answer for me still comes back to community, encouraging communities to become more self-sufficient in terms of food production and support each other. But how do we encourage that big shift, that big mindset shift, whereby convenience and price are lower down the list in terms of priority over the fact that we need to be able, because obviously if we can flood the market with produce grown at local level, at community level, the price will naturally be driven down, which make it far more manageable. And also we can lean into that kind of heart-based economy situation, whereas there are those in poverty in your community. Can we help them out here? Is there something actually we can come together and help them out? But how do we encourage, and I know we're going off the questions here, but how do we encourage people to start shifting that mindset, to start thinking about seasonal things, about local growth, about being able to support that themselves, and taking more responsibility themselves? How do we create that mind shift? And we'll open the floor up here, guys, so do jump in if you've got a point on it, because it's the biggest challenge, I think, is shifting the mentality.
Yeah, I mean, to be very honest, I think a lot of it's to do with marketing and education, those sort of dual things. And I think possibly in this sector of, you know, real food and good food, we're all quite motivated by the kind of public goods and the good things behind it, and we're maybe a little bit scared of marketing and actually just saying, you know, the supermarkets and other industries spend millions and millions of pounds on getting people to buy their produce, and ultimately what we're in is a trade business. You know, food is about people buying stuff and eating it. It is a consumption process, and we need an enormous marketing campaign to really help people not just understand all the true value of local food and all the public benefits, but also to hit them, kind of to reach their hearts. You know, it's not just the sort of the facts and figures, it's actually to really make people emotionally connected and really value local food. You know, and that comes down to things like cultural pride, you know, pride in your like regional dish, or you know, pride in your local farming community and all this kind of thing. And actually people, you know, getting people excited about that and getting people to really see our British homegrown food and local food cultures as something really exciting, something to be celebrated. So yeah, I kind of feel like it's sort of marketing. There's education as well, but it's just actually about getting people excited.
No, valid, absolutely valid. Either of you chaps got a point on that?
Yeah, I'd love to have a massive marketing budget to match that supermarket budget.
That
would be incredible. And yes, that would be amazing. And the other thing that we find really powerful is the power of example and the power of word of mouth.
Yes.
And people actually just, I was talking last night about how we give away our power. We wait for the politicians to make changes. We wait for the corporations to tell us what to do and what to buy. And we feel powerless, but actually there are a lot of us and we have incredible power, not just in terms of where we spend our food, but also in the way we act. So I live in a town in Gloucestershire where I've been very lucky that there are several community supported agriculture projects where we can actually get together and grow our own food. We, in some cases, pay the farmers and growers to grow the food for us, and we turn up and do volunteer time. The project that I'm most involved with, there are 7 families who turn up for 3 or 4 hours on a Friday morning, and we grow food together. And like Julie was saying, there's a real heart value in that, apart from the financial value of bringing home punnets of red currants and black currants that you couldn't even buy in a supermarket. If you could, they wouldn't be anything like as nutritionally, they'd have been picked underripe or whatever. But the heart value of actually growing food together and working together collectively and growing food. And we can do more of that. There's a lot of people with bits of their garden that they don't use. There's lots of people who have time to come, even if it's just a couple of hours every week, and grow food together. It builds community, it creates good quality food, and it creates good quality food in a large number of small portions of land close to where the people live. And I think that is a huge double whammy in terms of creating more food of high value and building community.
So it is a case of lead by example, which I absolutely agree with. But Steve, for me, I was having a conversation this morning about how we support towns and cities where they don't have the green space, they don't have the growing space quite as readily available, certainly not for the numbers that they've got there. And the facts that we might have to look at aquaponic systems, hydroponic systems and so forth. But towns and cities are the biggest issue, Steve, in terms of being able to produce their own food. Yet obviously the volume is higher in terms of citizens. Do you have any thoughts on that side? Because that for me is the biggest concern.
Yeah, just touching back on this education process. I mean, I'm ex-financial services, so I was in the mortgage game for years, and we spent a lot of money on marketing, Google pay-per-click, that kind of thing. Everything I think I've ever done, every job I think I've ever had is culminating in this particular role. Now, I'm not from the food game, but I'm delighted not to be from the food game, but to be in the food game. I couldn't think of a better industry to be in right now. And we're absolutely loving it. We totally see what it can look like if you get it right. There's absolutely an education piece to get these people thinking straight. I talk about the wide asleep masses when we talk about the general masses out there who are walking about and they're totally oblivious, shoulder shrugging, they don't care. What can you do? It's the government. They just throw it all away. Within this particular community of people who are aware of what's going on, they still don't fully get it. The powers that be, the controllers of all of this, they know that we are creatures of habit. They absolutely know it. They know us better than we know ourselves by a long shot. And they know how to get you. Buy one, get one free. Yeah. Tesco, Asda, Lidl, they're all still advertising on the TV. Do you think you don't know where your local Tesco is? Do you think you've suddenly forgot and they need to advertise on TV? They're still advertising on TV because they've got the money and they want you eating that crap food. It's all by design. They want you in there eating that crap food. I mean, I've had people say to me, and it can be very frustrating, I want to buy your stuff, but you're not as cheap as Tesco. And I'm saying, well, I'm a year old. We can get there. And we can get better food on your table. And it might be slightly more. I say to them, taste it, do the organic Pepsi challenge, buy a box of our food and compare it to your organic or non-organic food with Tesco, work out how much more you paid. As Nick's saying, the nutritional value, see what your family think when you've got a different type of pasta on the table, a different type of meat on the table. We can't, supermarket organic and premium organic are 2 different products altogether. Theirs is entry level. When they got into organic, they argued with the regulators to lower the standards. Now, I'm a year in. Do you think I'm going to knock on the door of the regulators and try and say we need to lower the standards here of organic? They had the audacity to go in and try and lower the standards. Who does that? Only they guys could do that. That's why they created their own organic. That's why they've tried to lower the standards. And that's why you're buying organic garlic from China with really low organic regulatory standards. But you see the organic label, you see the Tesco label, and you think, there's my garlic for this week. I'm sorted and I'm still eating well. Well, you're not. But they know that deep down. Do you think these supermarkets changed their whole ethos and stance? Do you think they're going to poison the non-organic customers and then suddenly put on a different capsule? You're an organic customer, we're going to treat you with total respect. It's the same guys, and I just don't trust anything that they do. And deep down, back to this, what Julia and Nick were saying, this education piece and marketing generally. We used to spend a lot of money in marketing. These kind of meetings are good, Catherine. These can help because again, our community will consume a lot of video. They will go out there and they will look and they will watch and they will spend time. You've got Richard Vobes, who we both know. Again, he looks like a Channel 4 type presenter. People, people can relate to Richard. Joe Blogs in the Street can relate to Richard Vobes. Not all that we watch is fit for public consumption, general public consumption. But in reality, if you got the mainstream of what you would call the awakened community on board, there's probably 2 or 3 million people there. Easy.
Yeah.
You can get to supermarket prices there.
Yeah.
You really
That's
can.
what I mean. Absolutely. Increase the volume, increase the output. It will drive down the cost and the prices, and we can start to be a little bit more competitive in that way. Nick, you've got your hand up. Do you want to jump in, my love?
I have, but I saw Julia was also responding to some of the things Steve was saying there. Did you want to come in first, Julia? Or
okay, thank you. That's very kind. I mean, I suppose I think you mentioned the word regulation, or I feel like regulation is something we really have to talk about, and it's definitely, there's a job to do in terms of changing the public and making people understand their food and the value of food a bit better. But ultimately, so much of this actually comes down to regulation. There has been a distinct lack of proper regulation of, fair pricing, even just the grocery code adjudicators sort of virtually not really there, might be being dismantled. We need regulation to level the playing field. And actually, if you have people who, frankly, are creating deeply unethical products that are kind of poisoning people and creating huge public health issues, highly processed foods full of salt, sugar and fat, no nutritional content, the whole conversation around the true cost of food is also what happens after people have eaten it. It's what happens to their health. It's what happens to the planet as it is produced. And unfortunately, the way that our regulatory system works, it means that none of those external factors or kind of scope 3 type of factors get priced into the food that we tend to buy, that we buy in supermarkets. The reason why the kind of food that we might buy from OFN or Better Food Traders or GoodFood Project is slightly more expensive, and I would also say often only very slightly, it's because it factors in all of those externalities into the way it's priced. So when you're buying from one of these amazing traders, you're paying for your soil to be protected, you're paying for biodiversity to remain, you're paying for lower carbon inputs and impacts, and you're paying to make sure that you're not eating a load of salty, sugary junk that is not going to feed your body. So that's where all those costs come from. But to really enshrine that, we need regulation. And we need, a ban on ultra-processed foods and a ban on buy one, get one free and all those sorts of things that will curb this really, really kind of criminal, unethical, huge food business that we have.
It's ironic, isn't it? Because the regulatory bodies, I'll come to you in just a minute, Nick, sorry, love. Regulatory bodies are going through the roof in terms of what they're upping on the farmers and the producers at source, but they're very, very lax when it comes to the factories, when it comes to the processors, as far as I'm aware, in terms of the regulations they put on them. So I think you're right. I think the whole regulatory, and that's not just food, by the way, I think all the regulatory systems that we have in the UK could probably do with a little bit of attention and certainly some adjustment. Nick, come to you, my friend. Yeah,
and while we're waiting for the regulation and the legislation, I think one thing that we can do in terms of an immediate thing is to increase the transparency. And one of the things that all of us on this call are very into is knowing where your food comes from. The reason we have organic standards in the first place is because there's a massive disconnect between the people who are growing the food and the people who are eating it. So we don't know, as consumers in supermarkets, we don't know where it's come from. We don't know how it's been grown. We need an intermediary to say, yes, this food is safe. This food is sprayed with pesticides, herbicides, whatever. If we had a closer connection between the people growing the food and the people eating it, we wouldn't need the certification. I'm just going to share my screen very briefly, if that's okay. There's a presentation here that one of my Australian colleagues produced, and she was looking at some of the advertising that goes on. This is an Australian supermarket, and very sort of powerful advertising to look at the what looks like a really high quality piece of food, and then she put it against the picture of that food being produced. I don't know if you can see that clearly, battery chickens, or so-called free-range chickens. These are free-range chickens.
That's right, yeah.
I've been to these broiler units, and trust
Yeah.
me when I say,
Yeah.
one of the worst things I've ever seen, because whilst it was exceptionally clean and it was very clean and tidy,
Yeah.
those chickens stood there like zombies. There
Yeah.
was no natural habitat, there was no
Yeah.
natural
Yeah.
behaviours, there was none
Yeah.
of that. They just looked like zombie chickens, and it was
Yeah.
absolutely horrific. Sorry, Nick, carry
So
on.
no, absolutely. So if just picking up on Julia's point, if you could say, come to the Better Food Traders and you can see where your food comes from, come to the Good Food Project, come to an Open Food Network hub, you can actually talk to the farmer, or you can actually click on a link and go to their farm, go to the farm website and actually see how the produce has been grown.
Yeah.
A bit more transparency, and maybe all of us just raising the awareness of what does this cheap supermarket food mean in terms of, as Julia was saying, the externalities. I'll just do one more. This is Woolworths supermarket again in Australia. This kid eating a fresh apple, and then a picture of of what happens to the orchard. Just, I mean, this is an orchard being sprayed during blossom. The orchards are also sprayed, within a few weeks of fruit being picked. And okay, organic certification allows a certain amount of spraying on fruit before it's picked. But do you really want to give your kid something that's had this happen to it? And then, right at the beginning of her presentation, she had this picture of these guys. These are refugees who are being paid almost nothing to wear these hazmat suits and to walk with wearing face masks through a crop, spraying again herbicides and pesticides on the crop. Sorry, I get very angry and emotional about these things, but yeah, let's be more transparent. What does cheap food mean? Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
and just to pick up
Well,
on
that leads us. Sorry, Nick, go on.
Can I just pick up on your earlier point about towns and cities? There's a really good project. How do people in towns and cities eat local? There's a great project called the Urban Agriculture Consortium, which is looking at building food economies within the big cities, and they are looking at lots of food growing projects. It's amazing how much food you can grow on quite a small piece of land if you grow it using a lot of people and agroecological and no dig principles and permaculture principles and so on. And the other project that I want to mention briefly is one of the Open Food Network hubs called Slow Food Birmingham, part of the Slow Food movement. And they have a food hub in the centre of Birmingham that was struggling to source enough food locally. So they've linked up with some food hubs in Shropshire, and the food hubs in Shropshire have got lots of producers, and those producers once a week will take an order from the Birmingham shoppers. So the Birmingham shoppers will order online through the Birmingham shopfront. An electric van goes out to Ludlow and picks up all of the orders from the producers once a week and drives it back into Birmingham. So it's sucking the food in from local producers. So yeah, they're not very local. They're not within a 20-mile radius, but they are within a 100-mile radius. And using the Open Food Network system, you can see who's grown this food, what are their growing standards, and talk to them. Yeah.
And I think we're going to go through a transition before everything's, more perfect, if you like, because at the moment we're a lot of groups, and there's incredible groups across the UK, and there's so many doing something. There's so many playing a part. There's so many looking for solutions. And I think we could come back in 3 years' time and all of a sudden things do actually look very, very different to where we are now. And I think we're in a very interesting transitional stage. And I think that includes a lot of farmers as well that want to go from that monocrop kind of culture, that approach, into a more traditional mixed farming approach. And I think over the coming years we're going to see that adjust, but for now I think we need to find lots and lots of solutions like this to almost, even some of it's going to be a sticking plaster effect, but we're certainly going to be moving in the right direction. I'd like to move on to the second question.
Catherine,
Sorry, Steve, come on.
How do you find the farmers when you're out there under PFFA banner approaching them? Are they open to it? Is it mixed?
So it's mixed. I went and did a couple of shows recently, and the farmers there, as it happens, were actually more traditional individual mixed farmers anyway. And they've certainly diversified, and a lot of these guys have been dealing with the public for years. So that was difficult to gauge. Other farmers we struggled to engage because they're busy. These are busy people. A lot of them don't like other humans. They're not sociable people. I mean, some are, absolutely, but a lot of them aren't. And I've worked with farmers for years, and this is nothing new. And that's just the way they are, and that's fine. But you have to understand that a lot of them aren't business people. They're led by their suppliers or by those that suggest that they support them and understand better. And a lot of farmers will go with it because they don't have the time to sit down and go through everything. They don't have the time to research it themselves. They're busy bloody people. So for me, what we're doing at the moment is we've got a project team currently putting together a blueprint for a community farm. So if communities want to develop their own farm, how do you find the land? How do you find the money? How do you get started? How do you approach growth? What does that look like? What equipment do you need? Blah, 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 blah. So it's a big old project, which we'd like to get tied up by the end of the year because we're not getting enough farmers engaged. And that's why I feel that it's really important that these community projects are pushed as hard as we possibly can. at the moment, because they're going to fill some of the gaps until the farmers kind of more farmers come on board, if you like, with the way we'd like to see things happen. But I think the control mechanisms, going back to the regulators, just to say, guys, I think, and this is a Catherine McBean comment, not a PFFA comment, I personally, based on my years of experience of doing this and looking behind the curtain, would suggest that the regulators are very much dictated to by the supermarkets. So the regulatory bodies are not independent, I don't believe. And I would go so far to say certain councils are very influenced by supermarkets as well, because they're one of the biggest employers, they're one of the biggest, producers of finances in the area. So I think supermarkets, there is far more darkness involved with them than people see. It isn't just the food that comes on your plate, it's the influence it has on us as a society, and actually how healthy is that? And I'd hasten to add that I don't think really very much at all. In terms of the next question, just because I'm conscious of time, and this, I think we could all sit and talk about this stuff for days on end, it's fascinating stuff. How can we as individuals and as organizations be more proactive in making the changes we need? I mean, for me, the answer is just all hands on deck, keep pushing ahead, keep going. But is there anything we're missing here, guys, that one of you have thought of that we can be more proactive or supportive, or what can we do as individuals to make a difference? And I'll throw it open.
Well, can I step in there? I mean, Nick and I have been meaning to catch up for some time, and it's great to meet you as well, Julia. And I'll if that's okay, speak with you after this about whether there's anything we can do. Nick and I connected. Nick saw a video that I put together on TikTok or YouTube or something like that. And again, back to marketing, these things can get some messages out there. They can be quite good. Nick contacted me, and we were having this meeting today, and I had a chat. What Nick's doing, the website he's got, the network he's put together is excellent. But even just chatting with him today, there was some ideas that I thought, you know what, we could do some work here with some of these hubs, and I could instantly see some opportunities. So that these kind of meetings, Catherine, are very important because they're connecting people who haven't been connected. I'm a year down the line, I haven't met these two good people until today, but after today, we can probably do something. And that's where it starts to gain its own kind of critical mass, and we get to gap fill, and you get to see this sort of these synergies emerge, and this kind of strength in numbers, and the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. Absolutely, when you start to work together like this. So I think to be more proactive, these kind of things are good to pull people together, get people thinking, get people talking, and then within that, we're all cascading out these messages to customers. And it doesn't matter to me whether they buy from me or buy from somebody else. I'm openly saying to them, leave the supermarkets and create your own supermarketplace. If you want to buy your cleaning products from me once every quarter, fine. And you buy your local veg, your local meat, your local milk, whatever makes up your personal supermarketplace, it's going to be an amazing experience. It's going to be good karma compared to what's in that food. What love is going into that factory food, and you're consuming it and putting it on your family table. It's not good for you, and people feel it. As you say, Catherine, there's a darkness around these places, and you can't. We can no longer support them, but yet we do. Our audience watching this tonight are still going there because they think they can't afford to leave them, and they think they don't have the choices, and they're in a habit. They are creatures of habit, and they can't break away. They know they want to. It's like leaving an abusive relationship. They want to get out, but it's the devil, But there's options out there that are far, far better.
Julia, did you want to jump in there, my love?
Well, I just want to, echo what Steve's saying, and also say that I think there is some hope and some positivity, because what it feels like is actually we've had, a certain government for a certain long amount of time. I think everyone sort of realised that food has been going down quite a dark and dangerous path, but there's now this real impetus, I think, behind a lot of traders, citizen groups, local authorities, regional, Wales and Scotland are doing some amazing work on food strategy. In fact, but virtually everyone apart from Westminster, really.
Just to jump in here and say, I've been at this 25 years. I have never been more excited by the energy that is being created around this ever in those 25 years. Sorry, Julie, I just want to say that, because whilst it might be dark, it's amazing.
It is. It feels like there's a real moment where people have kind of gone, wait, whoa, where have we got to here? And there's a whole lot of diverse actors. And, sometimes that leads to fragmentation. But I think what we're also seeing is a really strong desire for collaboration and some really amazing projects where you see some kind of top-down strategic thinking, but also that kind of grassroots action to bring it together. Some fantastic local authorities writing their local food action plans, just all this really ambitious work happening. And I do feel really hopeful that it's not just one thing that's going to make this work. It's that many people with many, many brilliant ideas are going to collaborate together and make a change. Nick, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, completely. I'm getting tingles down my spine just hearing you guys talk about this. And my sense that as the darkness increases, so does the light. That the light and the darkness, and as things are getting darker, there is more and more hope for change, and we will change this thing. Human beings are incredibly creative. We've come through millennia of change. Go on, Catherine.
The thing is, I think as well, when I set up PHA and PFFA, one of the key things I wanted to do is ensure that the power returned to the people. We naturally decentralised the power structures that we have in this country or across the world, and the power came back to the people, back to communities. Yeah. And again, I started trying to do something like this about 7 or 8 years ago, and it fell flat because the time wasn't right. If ever there was a time for the people to start stepping into their power and making the change, it's now. What we've seen happen over the last few years has been absolutely phenomenal in terms of people saying, and it is about personal responsibility. It's like, hang on a minute. The government have spoon-fed me, the supermarkets have spoon-fed me, the education students. We are now going to step up and say, hang on a minute, we're not going to do that anymore. We realise that you guys, you haven't got our best interests at heart all the time. We're going to put ourselves first and what we need as a community. And that community could be your local village, your hamlet, it could be your local town, whatever that might look like. Yeah. But now is the time, and never before have I seen the numbers, enthusiasm and energy that we're seeing now, be it in food or health or any other area, where people are becoming far more independent and working together. And what I'd like to suggest here is, I know we've got question 3 yet, but as we're in the mode, the Urban Agriculture Company, the Slow Food, what I'd love to do is pull together a round table with a number of different key groups that are having an impact across the UK. You've got the pharmacy, the co-op, you've got other ones that are really actually having really quite a good input. And I'd like to suggest we do another round table next month or maybe September because of summer. And all of us come together and see, based on what Steve was saying, Andrew, I think we've all been saying it, how we can further collaborate, further support, further find solutions together. So with your permission, I think if we can do something like that in September, we're just going to, it's great that you guys have met. Wouldn't it be great if we had 5 more or 10 more or, and there we develop and grow and we'll find those solutions. So moving on to question number 3. This might be, I think probably across the board, there'll be a lot of people agreeing with this. And I don't know that there's just one solution, but what would a fairer and more sustainable food system look like in the UK? And I'm happy to throw that open, but I would like to say for me first, this is, again, it comes back to community, local growth, individual growth, what we can do at that local level. I think local is the word that is just going to keep coming back to us. And ensuring that for the farmers that we work with, we try to encourage a traditional mixed farming approach. So they've got multiple routes to market, they're healing the soil, respect for the animals, we're working with nature better, rather than that kind of monocrop industrial style farming that we've seen them moving towards. But let me throw that over to you guys, because I just want to get that in because I'm passionate about it. Anyone can jump in.
Oh, well, I think you said localized, regionalized is, I think, has to be the way forward. It's that sort of decentralizing and putting things back. So we have, much shorter supply chains. And there is some good work being done on things like regional food hubs being talked about. There is an infrastructure problem in this country. So abattoirs have closed. That kind of warehousing and distribution thing is currently very expensive, and not much of it is done at a much more local level. And then, I suppose just like to see the kind of change towards people like us, better food traders, getting more and more customers to kind of switch to a different way of buying and really enjoying that process of going to their shop or to the farm or buying online, but sort of really knowing who they're dealing with and having those, those mutual connections.
I wonder if selling the experience ties in better with the marketing side, that actually where they're approaching this is wrong. We're looking at get food out, get fairer food out, get better quality food out, which is fantastic. But actually people buying in, do we need to sell the experience more? Not just the benefits in terms of the nutritional value, so your physical health feels better, and we know where the food's coming from, so we know it's of good quality. Do we need to focus the marketing more on in the experience? Because the experience is very better. The experience is very, very fun. compared to going to your supermarket, let's be honest, which is dull, it's annoying, it's quite stressful, there's people everywhere. You know, do we start to, sorry, that just came to me, we'll come back to that. But yeah, I'm just thinking when it comes to marketing, are we not spending enough time on marketing the experience? Sorry, back to you, Julia. Sorry, lovely.
Well, I mean, yeah, experience is good. I think that the challenge there is that you just don't want it to feel like a tourist day out sort of thing. Like, we want people to buy local food day in, day out as their regular grocery shop. And if that involves buying it online through Open Food Network or whoever, you know, clicking, collecting, or clicking and having a delivery is still a great experience in terms of convenience and busy families. You know, I think there are lots and lots of different ways of buying the right kind of food produced by, you know, great local farmers, and you can, you know, have that experience if you want it, but I don't think that should be the only thing. I suppose the one thing we haven't sort of touched on that I know is just, I feel like I'm going to drop something in, but I feel don't talk enough about the need to reduce our meat and dairy consumption as an environmental and a public health issue, and just how that can play a part in a shift in what people eat and how they buy, and also how that ties back to kind of land use and farming and all those sorts of things. I
have to disagree with that.
Yeah, go on then.
I don't think we should reduce our animal products at all. I think the way we farm animals, or way we've started farming animals in the last 20 years, isn't the way to do it. But I think animals play an absolutely key role in our soil health, in our environmental health. I think nutritionally, animal products are essential. I mean, again, there's a lot of different diets out there, or food choices, or anything people make. But for me, animal products are absolutely key in terms of human health. And what the byproducts that come off the animals for human health. But I think how we farmed in the last 20-25 years in terms of animals is not going in the right direction, and we need to redress that and bring it back to very, you know, much more traditional approaches, when meat was on the table 3 or 4 times a week, and it was a key item that we had with meals, but we treated it like gold in terms of making sure we stretched it out, used every part of the animal, made sure we did things in a very humane manner. I don't like where it's gone, but I would not suggest for a minute that we reduce the animals within the food system, because actually when you start looking at things like artificial fertilizer and many other ways, it's very damaging on the environment. And I think it's a fallacy that's put out there to suggest that the animals are degrading the food system in any way, when in fact I think they have a much more positive impact if farmed correctly than people are even aware of.
I was just going to say, surely you're both right. If we farm meat and dairy correctly, there will be less of it. You know, these factory farms produce vast quantities. The tonnage of meat and dairy coming out of these factory farms is huge. Yeah. If we were farming correctly, the tonnage would reduce, but the quality would go up, and the environmental benefits and the health benefits and the food system benefits.
Yeah, because it's like how we feed livestock now is not how I would like, you know, a lot of times if you look at the animal fodder industry, it's not a pretty industry, it's not a nice industry, and it's very controlled. So one of the things we want to do through PFFA is support farmers in growing their own fodder crops by educating more people in how to become feed mixers. So you've got these feed mixers, they go onto the farmyard, they mix up the feed with the right protein levels of everything that the farmer's grown the volume of himself. And the farmer can hold it, doesn't even leave the site, doesn't need to leave the site. But the farmers currently don't have the capacity, because the agricultural fodder industry has been so powerful for the last 20, I mean, you go back to even the CCJ or whatever it was incident that happened years ago. That was through a particular fodder that came in, manufactured through Doughty's, I think it was. I might be wrong, so don't sue me. But I think we do have to look at this very, very heavily, and we need to really redress how we farm animals, and back even down to the fodder crops. Another thing that we want to do at PFFA is educate on more mobile butchers. The way butchery is done now in terms of the abattoirs and various other methods, it's not nice, it's not decent. What you want is for the availability, and this is what we work with a few farmers on, who go out, they meet their community every season, they speak to before every season, they speak to their local community, your community say, right, you want X amounts of so-and-so, X amounts of so-and-so, this crop, that crop, and the farmer will sign a contract and then meet that need. And then on the day of butchery, the butchery's done, the farmer, it's all planned in advance. The farmer says, right, you need to be here by 6 p.m. to collect your meat, your half a pig or whatever you've ordered. And then they go on and they physically collect it and take it back. So there's not even a need for storage on site for the farmer. You know, by that way, you're reducing massively the footprint, if you like, of that animal. Plus, you know, that farmer is going to be selling his own meat, which when you're using an abattoir, they're touch and go. So he knows what's gone into that animal. He knows that it's well reared, and the customer knows what they're getting at the end. And it really reduces down the stress of the process for the creatures involved. But yes, I'm going to shut up because I could go on about that for
I only
eons.
mention it. I actually mentioned it more. I mean, I think we're on the same page, really. I completely agree. There's a really important role for animals in farming and in the human diet. I think what a lot of people in general don't realise is that we should not, for our own health, be eating meat every single day of the week, twice at 2 meals. And the same with, you know, cheese and dairy. We just shouldn't be consuming that amount. You know, a balanced plate is half of it is vegetables plus your carbs, etc., etc. And there are huge greenhouse gas associations with beef, mainly in other countries. There are issues around deforestation. You know, we can't avoid that. Like your average beef.
That's the fodder crops.
Pardon?
The deforestation is the fodder crops. It's growing for the soya and whatever else. Absolutely.
So it's all related. But I think we quite often, in a way, it's like it's one of these conversations that becomes really polarized really quickly, and people are like, no, I really want my beef, and it's like, well, no, we're not saying that. It's just you need to just reduce it a little bit. If everyone just had one less meat dish, and also supplemented with things like legumes and, you know, amazing grains and all the things that hobmydods are growing and producing, you know, all these sorts of other foods that, again, we've kind of slightly lost touch with and lost the knowledge of how to cook and lost an appreciation for. Yeah, so that's the point I'd like to make.
Can I jump in on the vision question? So my vision is thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people growing food, you know, small scale farmers, larger scale farmers, allotment ears, people growing food in their gardens, people, you know, baking bread, people getting involved in growing food as much as possible. People who have time helping out on those farms, people who have time setting up food hubs to bring together collectives of these producers, possibly using online systems like the Open Food Network, possibly developing regional food systems like Julie was just mentioning. So regional food systems like this one down in East Devon and Cornwall. GoodFood Loop, yeah. So down in that part of the country, 5 different food hubs, each with about between 20 and 100 producers feeding into each of these red squares. And then once a week, a van that drives 2 vans. This black line is one van that's owned by Tim Grow Local that goes around and picks up produce from some of the producers. This is an inshore fishery co-op, and delivers to the other hubs, picks up from the hubs and delivers to the other hubs. And another line owned by Backyard. So this is there are now probably about 300 food producers connected together, selling to hundreds, if not thousands, of shoppers and buyers.
That's absolutely brilliant.
And these regional food systems are starting to happen, and they can be possible. So yeah, people just getting involved. If you can spend time or money buying local food, then do it, and think about where your money's going. Every time you set foot in a supermarket, that money is contributing to that dark system we've been talking about. I'll stop.
Yeah. Absolutely brilliant. Absolutely. It's lovely to see as well how much has already been achieved. And really, we're only at the start of this journey. So it's really, really exciting. I just want to give you guys, if we can, before we tie off, like a minute or two to talk about where your organisation's at the moment and what you need, how people could get involved. Is there something that you're looking for support with? Do you need more of anything? Just to put it out there, because obviously I know with Nick, we really want every producer, every customer, anyone selling any bit of food to get on the Open Food Network. But if I come to you first, Julia, my love, where you guys are at, is there any support you need or how people can get involved?
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity. So we are a membership organisation, we're a network. So our strength is in our network and our numbers. And we provide some of that means of like regional networks. We try and link people up. We allow people to kind of mentor each other and so on. So if you are, or if you know of anyone who's selling food who should be a better food trader, what you get by joining us is a whole lot of really good training on everything from kind of financial planning through sales, marketing, how to manage your team, all sorts of things around running a food business, a food retail business, plus that whole networking opportunity and just lots of really amazing like-minded people. And yeah, lots of hubs from the Open Food Network and other platforms are members of us. But we would like to get to a point where really we're a place for for everyone to come and join. And Steve, I think I'll be asking if you want to come and join us. You'll be
yes, I'll be joining.
a prime candidate.
What's your website? Before we move to Steve, Julia, just what's your website, my love? Do you know it off the top
It's
of your head?
betterfoodtraders.org. Yeah, it's pretty straightforward.
Brilliant.
So there's lots more information there. Thank you.
Brilliant. Fantastic. Yes, guys, if you're out there or you know anyone producing food on a local level, it's another great support option. So please do get in touch with Julia and co. Steve, over to you, my friend.
Yeah, so just to touch base on that last question of fairness in food, price is still a factor whether we like it or not. There's people out there, I talk to our customers, again, this education process, we're doing videos that I'm saying, take your powerful grocery budget away from those soulless organisations, those fake food corporations and the soulless supermarkets. Take it and spend some of it with us and some of it with your local providers. Now, we've got an average order size just now, and it's going up all the time, and our numbers are going up all the time. And I've been here before in business where it's just about to get to the right stage where you could really put your foot in the gas and get to where you want to get to, with working with people like yourselves as well, all three of you. I mean, you take 5,000 customers spending 200 quid a month with somebody like us, or in the market, that's £1 million a month. Now, talk about fairness. Price is a factor. If I go to Biona or Mr. Organic, who produce amazing food, really, really good food, if you want your pantry beans and spaghetti and all of these things, because again, what are we trying to compete against? The supermarkets. You can't really go to the local farmer who's selling meat or selling a veg box. Well, where's your jar of coffee? Where did that come from? Who made the coffee? Where's your tea bags? Where's your toilet paper coming from? Where's your cleaning product? There's all sorts of things. We're competing against the supermarket style shop. We've got a supermarket style shop, and when you add in the local farmer, butcher, baker, etc., what you have is this supermarket place. But 5,000 people spending 200 quid a month with us is £1 million a month. If I go to Biona and say, you're going to get 200 grand of that every month, you're talking about 15 to 30% depending on the companies. Now we're down at supermarket prices. So the answers are there. Somebody said to me before, I'd love to come to you, but you're not as cheap as Tesco. Well, where's my 5,000 people giving me £200 a month? And I'll show you as cheap as Tesco if you want to see it. Because I don't need the money. I'm not doing this for money. I'm doing it to build I want security for my family. I don't want to go into this abyss that we're facing. I don't want these people running the food show in the UK. I just don't. It doesn't suit me. I'm not interested in it. I'm not interested in it for my kids' future. In the first round of supermarkets hitting the streets of the UK, they shut down every single local butcher, baker, everybody, because our grannies and grandparents were hypnotised by price, hypnotised by this great new thing, the supermarket. And if we're not careful, the supermarkets would shut down the Bionas, the local farmers, everybody. They'll shut down everybody and they will take it all. That's where they're looking to go with it if they get their chance. That's where they want to go. These guys want to own the whole game. If we're not careful, they will get it. So we've got a chance to breathe life into something new. As I said, you take 5,000 people and that's nothing. If it can be 5,000, it can be 50,000. If it can be 50,000, it can be 500,000. You take those numbers that I'm talking about there, move those powerful grocery budgets away from them, move them into these networks, and it changes overnight. But we have to educate them to say that you can get a supermarket style shop, because that's what they want to see turn up on their door. You've got to give them choice. We've got a huge range of choices for them. And what we say, and we've got a pre-order system where they can order 10 days away. And I'll say, look, you're going to eat in 10 days. It's not a surprise coming to you. You're definitely going to eat in 10 days' time. So all I'm saying to you is, give me 10 days and I'll open up a world of organic food to you from the best suppliers in the UK. You tell me what you want, give me 10 days to get it, I'll get it to your door. And Brilliant. You take that and anything else that you've got locally, and that is your supermarket place. And we're there. Biona, there's no point thousands of us independents all dealing with Biona when we could have one or two big accounts. And I'm not saying we're all going to get together and form cooperatives, because that's messy. Catherine, I don't get involved in too many things. This is a rare occurrence for me to do. We get the head down here and the bums up and we're just getting on with it. I don't spend huge amounts of time talking to other people about if, buts and maybes. We're just going for what we think is an answer, and I think we've got some good solutions. We're getting good feedback, and I'd be delighted to work more with the guys. I've got some good ideas even just from today and from looking at the website. So I think there's a lot of positives there. I'm a glass half full kind of guy. I see positives, but I'll tell you what, if I'm on a track and a train's coming, I'm going to do something about it. I'm not going to shut my eyes and hope, and I'm not going to manifest my way out of it. I'm going to do something about that train coming. And if we don't get serious fast, we're going to get hit. And all you have left will be the supermarkets and these corporations feeding you. You will have nowhere to go if they get their way. I'm not talking about next year or the following year. I'm talking about within the next 5 to 6 years. If they get their way, we'll have no choice, and they'll probably get rid of organic, or it'll be so watered down that you wouldn't want to eat it anyway. So we've got an opportunity here where you've got control over where you spend your money, and we should do it sooner rather than later. We should move en masse and take our money away, boycott them completely, take your money away, get your acts together, get your head out your bums and get on with it. And don't say it's too expensive, because as Julia said, it's not much more expensive. You'll eat less, you'll enjoy it more. You've got satisfaction that you're doing the right thing. You've got good karma all round, and all the food, there's good karma compared to that supermarket food. If they've got you on price, you might as well raise the white flag and forget it. You're beat. You don't even, no point coming to me if you want to keep doing it. But I think we can compete on price as well. And I think we should compete in price, but that takes volume. Put 20 or 30% more discount on my prices. I don't need that 20 or 30%. I can put that straight down to the consumer. Now we're a big Costco. We're an organic Costco. We're a supermarket, but we'll pick up the phone to you. We'll talk to you. Our drivers will talk to you. It's a much better experience. You've got good people here in the background packing your boxes with a bit of care. It's a soulful experience compared to those soulless organisations.
No, fantastic, and absolutely well said, Steve. Thank you so much for that. If you've got a website, how do people get in touch with you? How do people get involved? What are you doing?
www.goodfoodproject.co.uk. Follow us on Facebook, TikTok, Telegram. We're always doing wee videos and wee silly things, and I walk about the office ranting about supermarkets and giving them a good old bashing because they need it. And just really try to explain how the system works. So visit the website. Go onto TikTok, go onto our Facebook channel, go onto Telegram, watch some of our videos, get a feel for what we're doing, get a feel for what we're about. We're on the same page as you. We're working really hard. I've never worked so hard in my life. I actually realised how little I did in my previous job towards the end. But now, as I said, I've never worked so hard. It's incredible what we're doing just now, but it's really, really enjoyable.
Good. Fantastic, Steve. Fantastic. Thank you. And Nick, we need everyone involved as well with Open Food Network. There's literally no one. If you've got apples growing in a garden, you can get involved with Open Food Network. So if you can just give us the lowdown, Nick, and how everyone can find you and get involved, that'd be fantastic.
Will do. Thank you. So probably the best page to go to is about about.openfoodnetwork.org.uk. That's the page we're looking at now. I'll put the link in the chat in a moment, and that will give you pretty much everything you need. What we want is, as Catherine says, anybody who's growing food, whether you're a farmer or a grower, or whether you just got an apple tree in your back garden, register on the Open Food Network. People will start to find you. They will start to approach you and say, can I sell your apples? Can I sell your bread? Can I sell your jam? If you open your own shop, then we will ask you for a small percentage of your turnover to help cover our running costs. Again, we're not for profit, we're open source. We're not in this to make money, we're in it to build better food systems. But if you go to about.openfoodnetwork.org.uk, you can open your shop. It takes about 10 or 15 minutes to open a shop. There's loads of detail there. If you go to our resources tab, some really useful resources there. Loads of stuff on marketing and legal and regulation around setting up a food hub or just selling your own food directly. Lots of good case studies of other people who are using the platform. And then loads of webinars, how to build customer relationships, all there, all free, all open source. So yes, about.openfoodnetwork.org.uk. Thank you.
Absolutely brilliant. No, absolutely brilliant. Thank you. And I've got to say, guys, this has been absolutely fantastic today. I know we only had 3 questions and it's taken us some time, but I think it's something that people are really waking up to. People are wanting to get involved. They're getting enthused. They're getting energized. And now is the time. I'm personally going to put my foot on the gas now and see how much we can push forward. over the coming months, rest of the year. But what I'd love to do is invite you all with a number of others. So if the three of you could kindly send me any contacts that you feel we should invite to another round table, whether that be closed or public, we can decide. But we'd like to do one in September, I think, after the summer, when everyone's had a moment to draw breath. But yeah, hit the ground running in September, and let's get some of these bigger groups like yourselves around a table and see how we can collaborate further and how we can break the back of this and end supermarkets once and for all. Wouldn't that be lovely? So yeah, let's start work going in that direction. So thank you all so much for your time today. I know you're very, very busy people. It's very much appreciated. I think people are going to get a lot out of this. When we put this out, we'll drop your links to your websites and so forth. And again, thank you so much for your time today.